What I'm about to share with you is my own personal experience. How should I put this? It hasn't really ended yet. Anyway, here's the story. I'm a 23-year-old man, living at home and working as a caregiver. My family consists of my father, 52, my mother, 44, and my younger brother, 18. This spring, my brother is planning to start living on his own for his new job. That evening, after dinner, I was in the living room with my father and mother, watching TV. We were chatting about things like where should my brother's apartment be? Or what does he need for living alone? Meanwhile, my brother was in our bedroom. He and I share the same room, apparently getting things in order for his job. As far as I recall, the TV show we were watching was Nandemokantayatan. Suddenly, there was a crackling noise on the TV. It only lasted a moment, so I ignored it and kept watching. I said something like, "So anyway," and continued the conversation. But when I shifted my gaze to my parents, I noticed something strange. They were both sitting there with their mouths slightly open and their eyes wide in shock, staring at the TV. "Huh? What? What's wrong?" I asked them, rattled by their expressions, which I'd never seen before. They ignored me completely, continuing to stare at the screen. Suddenly, only their wide-open eyes started in my direction. "Wha?" The next moment, as if nothing had happened, my mother said, "Anyway, about your brother's cooking." And my father said, "I think he'll be fine, right? Don't you think so?" I blurted, "Wait. Hold on a second. What was that just now?" My parents aren't the type to crack jokes, especially not bizarre ones. They've always been rather strict and serious. So I couldn't believe they would ever do anything like that, even as a joke. My mother asked, "What do you mean, just now?" My father added, "Huh?" Both of them looked puzzled. Knowing their personalities, I could tell they weren't pretending. This was their genuine reaction, which made me feel an even stronger sense of wrongness. That thing you just did." They had no memory of it. Of making those faces at all. Never mind. I mumbled and looked down. Then my mother said, "By the way, when are you going to die?" "Huh?" My father continued, "Yeah, we should probably talk about that. When do you plan on doing it? Suicide? Accident? What?" I couldn't make sense of what they were saying. I was completely thrown off by these rapid-fire bizarre questions. Eh? Huh? Me? Die? Huh? What? I stammered, totally at a loss. My parents, meanwhile, pressed on as if it were the most natural topic in the world. "Father, we've been waiting all this time. It's about time, don't you think? Mother, we'll help you. Everything will be fine. Right?" They continued talking about it in a calm, matter-of-fact way. They chatted about how hanging yourself is messy, sleeping pills might be better, or how jumping off somewhere might not hurt if you lose consciousness on the way down. All as though they had actually witnessed each method themselves. They even laughed occasionally, though I had no idea what was supposed to be funny. Hey, what the hell are you talking about?" Feeling a surge of fear and anxiety at how unlike themselves my parents were acting, I yelled at them. Then they both turned their faces toward me. Their eyes were pointed in opposite directions. Father, die. Mother, die. Eek. Even though their eyes were skewed in opposite directions, their faces were aimed directly at me. Like broken dolls, they chanted "die" over and over. I couldn't stand it any longer and ran to the room where my brother was. Bang. "Whoa. You scared me. What's going on, bro?" My brother, seated at his desk, was filling out some papers. So. Dad and Mom. Their eyes are messed up, and they kept saying "die." And before that, there was some static on the TV. He said, "Sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about." Honestly, I didn't really know how to explain what was happening either. I myself couldn't comprehend what was going on. I mean, so. Basically. My words died in my throat, my head spinning. It's just that Dad and Mom are acting so weird. My brother's mouth hung open, and his eyes grew wide. Oh. My parents had changed. And now it was happening to my brother, too. I watched in horror as his eyes slowly drifted in opposite directions. I bolted for the front door. What the hell is this? What the hell is happening? Just before I made it outside, I caught a glimpse of the living room. My parents were standing there, looking right at me. Their eyes were still twisted in opposite directions. I sprinted at full speed to a place with more people around. After catching my breath, I called a senior colleague from work on my cell phone, someone who lived alone. I explained the situation, and he let me stay at his apartment. He could see spirits and ghosts, so even though my story was hard to believe, he listened seriously. He said, "That's scary. Alright, tomorrow I'll take you to a temple I know. They can do something about this. For now, just trust. You look awful." That night, I stayed at his place. I couldn't sleep at all, of course. The next day, he had the night shift, and I had the day off. At 6 in the morning, we drove about 30 minutes from his apartment to a certain temple. We met the chief priest there, and I told him what happened the previous night. The priest said, "I see. You must have had a terrible experience. You look absolutely drained." He looked at my face with concern. Then he said, "We can't just leave things like this." So the three of us, my colleague, the priest, and I, decided to return to my house. The scene we found there was hellish. My father was walking back and forth between the living room and the hallway, bleeding profusely from both arms and both legs. In the corner of the living room lay several bloodstained knives, tossed aside. I heard him muttering to himself, "After 2 more laps, I'll cut the artery in my right leg. After 3 more laps, I'll cut the artery in my arm." My mother was in the bathroom. She kept pushing her head under the water in a full bathtub, then coming back up, over and over. Using her own hands to force her head under, she was saying, "Ah-ha-ha, gasp. Ah-ha-ha, gasp. Ah-ha-ha, gasp. Right on the brink of death. Right on the brink of death. Right on the brink of death." My brother was at his desk, writing something. He was holding a utility knife, and there was a mirror on the desk. He was carving our home address, city town, onto his body. I broke down crying in sheer terror. Afterwards, thanks to the priest and some other people he called in from another temple, my 3 family members were somehow saved. They've been fine ever since. However, my brother and my father still have scars all over their bodies, which gets really depressing if we ever go to a hot spring or somewhere like that. Sorry for the long, rambling story. Now, I'll share a sort of extra piece to the story. After all this happened, I asked the priest what caused my family to end up like that, and apparently, it had something to do with an ancestor. You know how in old samurai dramas you sometimes hear the line, "I'll curse you and your descendants forever"? It seems it was that kind of curse, but in a real form. And the method was brutal. Rather than just killing outright, it waits until the target starts a family, then possesses them and drives them into a corner over a long period of time. That's what I was told. But apparently, this time, the cursing spirit didn't have it so easy. It turns out that in my previous life, I was some kind of high-ranking monk, so from the moment I was born, it couldn't touch me. That night, it grew impatient and tried to corner me, making my family repeat "die" to pressure me, or something like that. But I fled, so it thought, well, at least I'll take out the rest of the family. Even so, the curse was too strong, and the priest alone couldn't fully lift it. So my father and brother, and presumably my mother, carry protective amulets with them at all times. The curse hasn't been completely broken. It's still ongoing. I hope the curse is lifted someday. Thanks, but I doubt this curse will ever really go away. Still, as long as I'm alive, it seems to be held at bay somehow, so that's good enough for me.